I'm Shazza and this is Hooked on Books. Hi. This week is Mental Health Week, and breaking the stigma around discussing mental health issues and promoting good mental health is something that's really dear to my heart, so I kind of wanted to make a video on it. And what sparked this video idea was this book, which I got sent last week. This is Looking After Your Mental Health and it's published by Usborne, so this is geared towards younger people, which is amazing to me. So I'd say that this is possibly for 9+. I haven't read it yet, I flicked through it so I can't say for sure, but I would say 9+ at this point. And I just think it's incredible that books like this exist, and discussing mental health and making it something that young people can understand is so positive, because this is a book that I definitely could have done with when I was growing up. Mental health for me growing up was something that was somewhat discussed, but it was still very hush-hush, and at no point did I ever feel comfortable enough to talk about any mental health issues that I might have had. And, you know, even if I did feel comfortable, I didn't necessarily have the language or the understanding to do so. And books like this really offer that, because it's talking about things like serotonin and dopamine, and those aren't words that I encountered until I was much older. So having that in here I think is really great. It also talks about a whole range of subjects, so it's opening up talking about what is mental health, but it talks about things like social media, which I think is really important, especially for young people these days. When I was growing up it was MSN, these days it's things like Facebook, Snapchat, and there's a lot of dangers around that, especially in relation to mental health. It also talks about sex and relationships, it talks about sexuality as well. Again, could have done with this when I was younger. I didn't necessarily feel like I had a particularly brilliant support network. I mean, I did to a certain extent, but not massively, and I wasn't the kind of person that wanted to open up about any issues that I had. I really was the kind of person that would go to the internet or go to a book. Hence why I'm a reader, and hence why I'm on BookTube. I'm attracted towards that kind of realm of things, and I feel more accepted in certain communities. But yeah, I'm really excited to see that this book exists, and I kind of wanted to highlight it a little bit. There's a few other books that I also wanted to mention, more adult ones, and these are all non-fiction adult books. The first of which is The Body Keeps the Score, and I love this book. I think that it's fantastic. It's a very accessible book, and it's looking at trauma. It looks at the mind, the brain, the body, and the transformation of trauma in a way that is really enlightening. It talks a lot about different types of trauma, and I find it fascinating that the things like war, sexual abuse, neglect, these all can produce really, really similar symptoms in an individual, and understanding how that can affect a person, you know, the effects of that are detrimental really, but it talks about things in a way. It's very positive, and I think that's what I really liked about it, and it's also really accessible and just generally really fascinating as well. Another book I want to mention is The Divided Self, which is a book that I've spoken about on my channel before. This is a book that, similarly to The Body Keeps the Score, what I like about both of these books, they're so unbelievably compassionate, and they really validate the experiences that people have. I think a lot of the time whenever you read about a mental health illness or a mental health issue, it can be very, it takes the human out of it almost, but whenever it puts the human in it, you really look at it from a whole different point of view, and this is a book that really changed my perspective on people that experience psychosis. It talks about it in terms of the onset of it, and it talks about how different it can be for everyone as well. This one, the language was a little bit more difficult to get into, but there was a bunch of case studies in here which really made me understand things much easier. So I love both of these books and I highly recommend them to you. Another book that I want to mention that I think I've spoke about before is In Therapy. This is quite a small, slim book. It's quite simplistic, but I also really enjoyed it nonetheless. This is a book that has a bunch of made-up case studies in a therapy office, and it kind of allows you to see what therapy is and how a therapist thinks. Like I said, it's somewhat simplistic, but it also really showed me how the subtleties of how a person responds, what a person says, how they act, their slight movements, how significant that can be in understanding who they are and what they're experiencing. It's a book that also has so many different types of individuals in it, which I loved as well. So again, another book that I really love and recommend. Two other books I wanted to mention are books that have recently been published, one of which is First We Must Make the Beast Beautiful, and the other of which is The Inflamed Mind. First We Must Make the Beast Beautiful is a book that I got sent as well, which I'm quite excited about. What a great title, first of all. This is a book that focuses in on anxiety specifically, and it's looking at how, instead of trying to just like get rid of the anxiety, it's more about how to manage it and work with it and live with it in a way that that is positive. I think that it's meant to be quite funny, very easy to kind of get on with, and I'm quite looking forward to it. I think that the title in itself has really sold me on it. The other book that I mentioned was The Inflamed Mind. Anything that says a radical new approach to depression on the cover, I'm totally in there. This is a book that is basically saying that the way that we have dealt with depression in the past isn't necessarily the right way. It's got this whole new perspective on depression and has a focus on the immune system, which I think would be really interesting. All of these books aren't massive in size, so I think that they're all quite easy to get on with and really good introductions to the subjects of mental health. There are plenty of fiction books out there as well that deal with issues of mental health, particularly in the YA realm of things. I've yet to find any particularly great representations of mental health in adult fiction books, so if you've got any recommendations for me, please give them to me. I have a particular interest in trauma, so if trauma is in any good adult fiction books and it's dealt with in a way that's good, let me know. I have been recommended a book that I think is called Mysterious Skin, so I have that one to get to, which is a book that deals with trauma, but if you've got anything else, let me know, because it is something that I'm interested in. Alongside all of this, I did also want to mention just reading and BookTube. Those are two things for me that I find massively positive in my life. A lot of the time I read in order to kind of escape reality, I guess, and I think sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes though, I think it's important to step back from reading and go out and be in the world and be with friends and be with family, or go and do a different activity, because I think that sometimes I read a little bit too much, but for the most part, reading is so important to me. You know, you can find a character or a story in which you can find yourself in that. Likewise, it can take you out of your own experiences and transport you to a completely different world, and I think sometimes that's really important. I also just think that BookTube is probably really important in terms of my mental health, because it's a community in which I found so welcoming, and I consider so many of you genuine friends, and I am so grateful to anyone that watches my videos, anyone that comments on them, anyone that is interacting in any way, shape or form. I'm just grateful for, and I suppose this is me saying thank you for that. I love reading and I love BookTube, and I think that they're both things that are really positive for my mental health, because they're both hobbies, and I think that having hobbies and having interests and having something that you're passionate about can really help you whenever you're having a low day. Likewise, I also sometimes think that it's important to take a step back from such things, so there may be periods of time in which I'm kind of non-existent on BookTube, or I'm not really reading, and I think that it's important to not beat yourself up over stuff like that as well. Anyway, I just kind of wanted to mention that as well. I feel like I've kind of rushed through this video because my battery's about to die, but I hope that this all made sense. Anyway, like I said, I'd love to have any recommendations or any chat in the comments, always welcome as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.